Hannah Payne was just found guilty for chasing down Kenneth Herring in her Jeep and killing him. Prosecutors say Herring hit another car and drove off. Payne then followed Herring and confronted him and shot him. Yeah, so this is basically a citizen's arrest gone wrong. Hannah thought she was doing the right thing by chasing this guy down and getting information, but then she suddenly cuts this dude off, gets out of the car all mad, and then shoots and kills this guy, like straight up. She tries to say it was self-defense, but you're gonna see what happens in this trial. So this is closing arguments and then deliberations, and then they come in with the verdict. Pretty intense. So this is her lawyer right here. He's doing closing statements, and he's gonna try to convince the jury one last time that it wasn't her fault and that it was self-defense.
So she's following this car, not knowing, not understanding what could happen, because she's never been in it. She's 21 years old, never been in a situation like that. In her mind, she's a young individual trying to help out. She hasn't seen the bad sides, so she's trying to assist, and in doing so, she's hanging back enough to get the tag number. And she does, and she reports it to him. I'd already got that tag number and given it to Robinson, who gave it to 911. Miss Payne is following. Why didn't somebody say, hey, we already got the tag? Stop. And you need to stop. She goes, man, I'm not gonna follow me. He's already caused one accident. We're the police. I'll just hang back here till the police gets. Now, if the traffic is as bad as they said, what's she gonna do? Pull off? Where you gonna go? You got traffic. Traffic wasn't as bad. As he's cruising by the whole thing, puts his hand out there with the phone, takes it off. It looks like he was concerned about traffic or anything. You try to take everything you hear and try to visually picture it. And you can decide that for yourself. And that's what I wanted. I wanted all the evidence out here so y'all could decide. Yeah, I saw it. It was crazy. She jumped in the window. But you try to extract from what they say. As we said, every time there's a story, there's a little bit of truth in it. So maybe the part that she was in the window is when she's being pulled in the window.
So when she went up to Kenneth's truck with the gun and was trying to get him to go back to the accident scene, she says that he like started grabbing her wrist and like tried to pull her in the window and maybe try to take the gun. But there's not much evidence of that like actually happening. But it's like, bro, you were chasing this man down, pretty much playing cop, like acting like you're a cop with a gun. You're not even involved. Like you're a citizen. You're not hired to be a fucking police officer. And you decide to shoot him. It's insane. How did this girl think this was a good idea, dude?
She jumps when she's pulling back, you get pulled in. We don't know. She heard the testimony the same I did. And you'll get to decide out of that, really believable, that she came up and said the vehicle stopped like an inch away from it. The vehicle stopped like an inch away from a vehicle. It appears they hit, but it was like an inch, so give or take. And then she said she pulled up like a foot, but she was behind the Jeep at that time, and she couldn't see what was going on, but she heard a gunshot. A person jumping in the window, somehow, some way, or whatever, and a gunshot. So we know there's a gunshot. And a lot of people congregate and start going back and forth on who did what, how they did what. The one thing they didn't compare is any kind of fingerprints or any kind of DNA on the trigger. The trigger of it. That seems to be what it was at speed. The trigger. Who pulled the trigger? What happened with it? Nobody tested it. And they came in and said, there's DNA. There's a dominant DNA, and there's a minor. And we all sit there and we learn something new about DNA as we're listening. And they said the dominant's going to be more of one person's DNA than the other. Probably no surprise to you, there's more DNA from Miss Payne on her gun than there is from somebody else. His hand got on top of that slide. And they were fighting back and forth. She had a good grip sometimes, she didn't have a good grip sometimes. But there was male DNA. So you can look at it, and as they talk about circumstantial evidence, you conclude that it was Mr. Herring. And compare it to the other witnesses. Because remember, 4 years to get these witnesses together. And I asked the witnesses, did you talk to somebody else? You talked to me, you talked to the detectives, and you as the decider of facts got to decide. From the story that you heard from the first account, the story you heard from the second account, my opinion is, when you go back and you talk about what you heard, we'll put together and say, yeah, this is kind of close, it's kind of not close. Your finger is going to stay with that gun as you're being twisted. If you're being twisted like this, and it's on the trigger, you're not going to have those bruises on your arm. And how could it be if the hand's on top of it, turning at the angle it is? And remember the angle it is. He's sitting there in the truck. And it's being twisted. It may have been at the angle at her, but in order to get to her, he's got to turn it around past him. And as he's doing that, he's got his fingers on the top, and they're going back and forth. State's got one theory, one option, that that finger of his thing was on the trigger. So as you go back, and you look at it, and you listen, you review all the pictures, and you hear all the evidence, and you hear the judge say, the state's burden never changes. A heavy burden to prove, beyond a reasonable doubt. And she starts off with the presumption of innocence. So you got old lady justice here, and she's got the scales. and you got the presumption of innocence. You're here. It takes a minute to get up here. There's got to be some good evidence to get you even close to being even. And then you got to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that one theory, that her finger was on that trigger and shot him, is the only theory you can come up with. And they proved it beyond, or proved it. They proved that he had diabetes, and I don't know where that's going. But by the sister saying he had it, they proved it. By saying that detectives twisted her story up and then coming back and correcting it, that she had a finger on the trigger the whole time. When you heard the struggle, you saw the position, and you got to believe that one theory is the only plausible theory that occurred. Other theories, that when he grabbed that gun, how that trigger went off. And that trigger went off while this young lady is sitting there, scared, out of her mind. Never been in a situation before. Here's like, I got something for you. Leaning back, getting the trigger, and pow, click. Shoot. He pulled the trigger. You heard the click. And they didn't see that was important. You see the whole picture, and you go back, and you go through all the pictures, and you go through your recollection of what the witness said, what the theories are. State didn't carry the burden. And I don't think I can sit there and look one person, one side, in the eye, and say that it was fair and I did it from the evidence given there. But you've heard it, you've seen it. I don't want to take more of your time. I know that.
So he's doing a lot of talking about how when there was a little bit of a struggle when she came up to the guy's car with a gun and shot him. But I mean, the guy was, at that point, in my opinion, was defending himself from a random lady walking up to him with a gun. Like, you're not a fucking cop. Like, this is a citizen's arrest gone bad. Like, what are we doing here? The guy was not threatening her life whatsoever, but she brought the gun in the picture. Like, this is insane to me. This was a 5-day trial, so this was pretty, case closed, in my opinion. Like, it was gonna be short. I just don't see how the jury could say she was not guilty.
You hear all the evidence, you see it all. This is not some killer. This is not some murder. This is a young girl who got caught up in the wrong situation with a good heart and good intention. And when she did it, her mind was not to confront, not to get in arguments, not to pull a gun, but to get the man just still back.
He just said that her mind was not to confront. This is a picture of her confronting a random dude with a gun, dude. Like, straight up walked up to him, confronting him with a weapon. How is that not confronting a random stranger with a gun?
And I've seen those eyes wanting to seek the truth. And I hope you've sought enough truth. There's still 3 other plausible theories of what happened. And I appreciate when you come back and find her not guilty of all 8 of these charges, these heinous charges they put against her. Thank you so much.
Now the prosecutor's going to come up and she's gonna hit a home run here. Here we go. Prosecutor's closing argument.
I mean, not that it has anything to do with it, but my entire life until I was 18 and my grandfather passed away, I was going to be a police officer. And on May 7, 2019, she got her opportunity. And as a result, 52-year-old Kenneth Herring, who was unarmed and minding his own business, was chased down, detained, shot, and murdered. And how do we know she shot him? Because we watched Officer Rich's body cam. And when he asked, who shot Mr. Herring? She said, I did. And you don't get the death penalty for committing a traffic infraction. And you know how much entitlement you have to chase somebody down, detain them, jump out your car, and run toward a stranger. He didn't know her.
That's what I'm saying. Like, she was for real playing cop. How can you even defend this? Straight up chasing someone down with a gun. You're not a police officer.
He didn't know why she was approaching his car and demand that they do anything. He didn't have to listen to her. He didn't have to do anything she said. As he continued to ask her, who are you? And the audacity to come here and take that stand and blame everybody else. Now,
her lawyer shaking his head.
Before I jump into all the facts and all the evidence that you heard today, I want to talk a little bit about what your duties are. You are to be a fair and impartial juror, honestly seeking the truth. So once you believe the defendant committed the offenses as alleged in the indictment beyond a reasonable doubt, the presumption is gone. Was that there was only one aggressor on May 7, 2019, and that was the defendant. Now, you heard testimony from the defendant yesterday, and she stated that she never heard 911 tell her to not chase. And then when I went through her testimony and the transcript of the 911 call, they told her 4 different times, either twice, to go back to the incident location. And they told her not to follow him. But she said based on her perception and what she believed they meant was that she should follow him as long as she remained safe.
That's a big point right there for the prosecutor, is that on the phone, the 911 operator told her not to follow him several times. That just shows that she was like pretty much chasing this dude down the street in her car and then cuts him off.
For the most part, they gave you everything that she observed the defendant travel around Mr. Herring's vehicle and block him in. She stated that the traffic on that day was very congested on Riverdale Road. It wasn't moving. And when I asked her, was there any way after she blocked his vehicle in and detained him, could he get around her? Could he move in any way? And she said no. And what she also observed was the defendant jump out of her vehicle, irate and aggressive, and immediately run toward Mr. Herring's vehicle, screaming and yelling for him to get out of the car and cursing at him. Now, when you watch the defendant's interview, she never mentions to the detectives at any point in time that she yelled at him, that she screamed at him, and that she demanded that he get out of the vehicle. Her characterization was, I walked up to the car, I held the phone, and I said, I have 911 on the phone, and they want you to go back to the scene. And that all of a sudden, the victim just became very irate, grabbing her and pulling her into the car. And that's not what any of the witnesses said.
Yeah, there's multiple witnesses that say they didn't see much of a struggle. That's big testimony for a jury, is that she says there was a struggle, but some witnesses say there wasn't.
Who advised that she saw the defendant outside of Mr. Herring's vehicle punching him, being very aggressive, screaming and yelling. Notified you that as she was leaving work and she made a left onto Forest Parkway, that she noticed the defendant's Jeep come flying down Forest Parkway, almost running her off the road, and other vehicles off the road, swerving in and out of traffic, which is ironic because she said the only reason she was trying to get Mr. Herring pulled over because he was going to harm other drivers on the road. She wanted other people to be safe. The defendant here had caused an accident. She didn't know that she had cut Mr. Herring off and pulled in front of him, but what she did know was that she just observed her driving very irate, and so she pulled over because she was interested in seeing what happened. And what she saw was the defendant very aggressively banging on what she thought was Mr. Herring's window. But then what she realized was that she was actually punching him inside the vehicle, was her pulling that firearm. And when she pulled the firearm, she pointed the firearm in the vehicle, and what they recall is that she immediately shot. So if you pull out a gun and point it at somebody, then you fire that firearm, then the natural and necessary consequence is that they may die.
Yeah, like you're shooting to kill if you're shooting a firearm at someone. You're not shooting to just injure them. That's not a real thing.
Then they acted with malice. When she chased Mr. Herring's vehicle in her Jeep, she cut off Mr. Herring's vehicle with her Jeep on Riverdale Road, cornering him in, blocking his ability to move, detaining him.
Like, what, bitch? Are you a cop? No. What are you doing? Relax. Like, absolute Karen move, dude. I'm gonna be honest.
When she jumped out of her Jeep in an aggressive manner, immediately runs up to Mr. Herring's driver's side door, screaming, cursing, and demanding him to get out the car, motherfucker. She tells Mr. Herring that she will shoot him. She draws her firearm from her waist. She racks the slide with 2 hands. And you heard on the 911 call, you heard her say, "You hit my car." And she says that right before she shoots.
Maybe because you cut him off, and someone's to say he stopped before he even hit her car, like he didn't even actually hit her car.
She's also charged with felony murder. We know the defendant committed an aggravated assault because you watched the video. And you watched her in this video shoot Mr. Herring. Now, when the defendant pulls a firearm and she pointed it at Mr. Herring, then he reasonably believed in that moment that he would receive a serious injury. And therefore, the aggravated assault was complete. Found an opportunity. And I pulled in front of him and I stopped him. So once she blocked his vehicle in, and blocked his access, blocked his movement, the false imprisonment was complete. She had no legal authority to do this. She's not post-certified, she's not a police officer, she has no arrest powers. Nobody legally told her to stop Mr. Herring's vehicle. And you heard a lot of talk from the defense attorney that he could have jumped up the curb and drove down the sidewalk. There was no duty for Mr. Herring to retreat. And as you heard Ms. Jackson say, who drives on sidewalk?
Prosecutor's doing a good job laying down each count, too.
Again, causing a gunshot wound to his abdomen, which caused his death. Is that a person is not justified in using force in self-defense if she is the initial aggressor. The defendant was the initial aggressor and therefore is not entitled to self-defense. Because there was only one person on May 7, 2019 that was entitled to defend themselves, and it wasn't the defendant.
That's what I was saying earlier. I feel like once she pulled up on him like that with the gun screaming at him, he was the person that had to defend himself. Like, she had zero right.
Once the false imprisonment was complete, when she blocked his vehicle and blocked his access, she was committing a felony. And if you are committing a felony, you are not entitled to self-defense. And once again, if you are the initial aggressor, unless she withdraws from the encounter and clearly communicates to the other person her intent to withdraw.
I know this girl nervous as hell.
So in the case State versus Hannah Rainier Payne, court has been informed that you have reached a verdict. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am, we have.
Okay, and are you the foreperson?
Yes, ma'am. I am.
Okay, if you kindly stand. Was your verdict unanimous?
Yes, ma'am. With regard to count 1 as to the offense of malice murder, we, the jury, find the defendant guilty. With regard to count 2 as to the offense of felony murder, we, the jury, find the defendant guilty. With regard to count 3 as to the offense of aggravated assault, we, the jury, find the defendant guilty. With regard to count 4 as the offense of felony murder, we, the jury, find the defendant guilty. With regard to count 5 as the offense of false imprisonment, we, the jury, find the defendant guilty.
And this only took 2 hours of deliberations, and they got to this point. This jury didn't need much time to decide on her fate whatsoever.
With regard to count 6 as to the offense of possession of firearm during commission of a felony, we, the jury, find the defendant guilty. With regard to count 7, as to the offense of possession of firearm during commission of a felony, we, the jury, find the defendant guilty. With regard to count 8, as to the offense of possession of firearm during commission of a felony, we, the jury, find the defendant guilty. Respectfully submitted, the 12th day of December, 2023.
Wow. Intense shit. I mean, this girl chased down a dude and shot him when she wasn't even involved in the accident at all. So this was kind of out of left field. Like, she didn't really need to do all that. Yeah. If you're new to my channel, subscribe for my Twitter and Instagram. Fucking love you guys. Peace out.